What is up? How's it going? It's been a while since I've live streamed, so we will see how this goes. This could be amazing, or this could be a disaster, or maybe a little bit of both. So we'll see. So earlier this week, we at Redwood introduced or soft launched or it said that Redwood SDK is going to be in preview mode, which is amazing. I'm excited to show you guys what Redwood SDK actually looks like. So anyways, I've been tasked with building a tutorial around the Redwood SDK code, and I've been working on it off and on for probably about a month now, and thought, it might be easier if I live stream this and then I either use a transcript to create an AI version of it or whatnot. We'll see. So let's actually build something. So I'm going to pull up the Redwood docs. If I pull this up, let's see what this looks like. I'm still holding out for ARC, even if it is on the way out. Okay, I'm going to share my entire screen. Boom. Okay. And I might have to pause in a minute, but we'll see how far we get. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do on this is I'm going to go over to the Redwood SDK, and we have a couple of starters here. So we have our minimal starter and we have a standard starter. So I'm going to start with the standard starter. And if you take a look at this, we are using Digit to install this. So I'm going to copy this line of code, and I'm going to come over to my terminal. And here I'm running, this is Warp. It's kind of my terminal of choice. So I'm going to go over to my sites folder. I have a Redwood folder, and the project that we're going to be building is called ApplyWise. This is used to help track job applications and things like that. It'll be kind of like a personal piece of software. And I'm going to stick this in the script folder because this is what I'm going to be using for the script to actually write this out long form. So I'm going to paste this in. So Digit, what it does is it will look at a repo and then it will clone everything, but it doesn't clone your Git history. And you can also deep link it. So here we're in our RedwoodJS organization, our SDK project, and we're specifically looking at the starters. And this is looking at the standard starter. So I'm going to rename this script. So I'm going to hit return. And what this will do, again, is it will clone everything within that folder. And after that, what we're going to do is I'm going to then change directories and go into our starter. I'm calling it script project name. So as soon as that's done, might take just a minute to get everything working. You know what? Okay, perfect. I'm sharing the right screen. So I'm pretty excited about just where things are headed with Redwood and our SDK. It is running on top of Vite. It's really fast. I think it'll provide a good alternative experience to Next, which should be pretty cool. Okay, so it's cloned it. It's still kind of thinking about everything. So give that a minute. And then we'll, yeah, perfect. So now, give me just a second. Okay, so we have cloned our standard starter, and now I'm just going to run pm I to install all the dependencies. Am I in the right folder? I'm not in the right folder. Let's go in the right folder and then run pm-pmi so that, again, we'll install everything that we need. So this is running on top of Vite. So it's pretty fast. You get of course, all the standard React stuff. So that'll take a minute. So once that's done, then we're going to run pm dev. So, and if you're interested in taking a look at this, I will include a link within the chat. Hello, welcome from Nigeria. Awesome. Like, what time is it over in Nigeria? It is currently 4:00 in the afternoon here. So, okay. Let's see. How are we doing on our pm install? It is just about done. Awesome. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say pm dev. And what this will do is it will get everything up and running. Now, one thing about the Redwood SDK is that it is kind of married to Cloudflare, which the cool part about that is it's fast. So my friend in Nigeria, it should be super fast for you. I don't know what your internet connection looks like, but that's really the goal, is to help people regardless of how fast your internet speed is. But it will set up, in this case, you can see it doesn't have Wrangler set up. Wrangler is the Cloudflare database piece. So it's setting all that up for us on the back end automatically the first time that you run pm dev. Now it's seeding the database for us. So it does come with a database out of the box. We are using Prisma, which is cool, but you can also use it with something like Drizzle. So now if I go to localhost 51, oh man, 10 o'clock at night. Props to you for still working. Okay, so if I go to localhost 5173, you should see a hello world screen. Cool. So we are up and running. We're off to the races. I'm going to come back to Warp now. The first thing that I want to do is I want to get up and running with Tailwind, and then I want to get ShadCN going. So the nice thing about this is because it is running on top of Vite, we can just use the basic install on Tailwind for Vite. So if we come over here, you can see it's saying, hey, install Tailwind CSS and install Tailwind CSS Vite. So we can just walk through the directions here. And so I'm using pnpm instead of npm. So I'm going to copy this and let me split my terminal here. So I'll say pnpm install, and then let's just copy these packages and paste that in. So got that installed. And then what we need to do is we need to configure the Vite plugin. So I'm going to come back over to my terminal. I'm using Cursor. So I'm going to say cursor dot, which means that it will open this project directly in Cursor. Cool. So let me get this on the right window. And I'll make it a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. I can get rid of the chat window for now. So I want to configure Vite. And if we come back over to the directions here, you can see it's saying, hey, go ahead and import Tailwind CSS. So we want to do that. And then we also want to include the Tailwind CSS plugin. So we're going to include that in our list. So you can see it's already pulling in the Redwood SDK package. Now let's go back over to our instructions here. It's saying that we need to import Tailwind at the top of our CSS file. So this is using Tailwind CSS 4, which I've become a big fan of. It took me a minute to warm up to it, but I have really enjoyed working with it. So inside my app directory, and we can kind of walk through what is included in each of these folders, I'm going to create a new file here. I'm going to call it styles.css and just paste that in at the top. Now I'm going to come back over to Arc, and it's saying, okay, we need to run our build process, which we already have going. And then we need to import our CSS file at the top of our document. So if I come in here, this document.tsx is the kind of like the wrapper for our page. It's the document. And I want to put a link tag here at the top, but this is going to be /app/ let's see. Source /app/styles. And that should do everything that we want. I'm going to go ahead and change the title while we're here. And I'm going to call this ApplyWise because that's the name of the app that we're building. So if I come back over to the browser now, let's see if this is working. Hopefully it was nice and simple. I'm not sure if that is coming in or not. Oh, I don't have any styles. Let's see. Let me put some stuff here. So if I say body apply BG white, that would be a Tailwind style. See, that is not, did something wrong. Let's see. Got my link, source app, styles, CSS. That's working. That's working. Let me just check my worker here. This should, I can explain what all this is doing in just a second. Perfect. This is the problem. Okay, so what we're doing with the Redwood SDK, as I mentioned, we're tied to Cloudflare, and this is a Cloudflare worker, and it really serves as the router for Redwood SDK. And so if you look at this, what we're doing is we're defining our application, and then at the top, this is middleware right here. So this is running in between every single request and response cycle. And at the top, we're setting security headings for our common headers. And then here we're handling our auth. So what it's doing is it's checking to see, hey, go ahead and set up the database. And then let's go ahead and set up our session. So it's all based on passkeys and sessions. And then I want to try and see if the session is there. And if it's not, go ahead, or if you have a problem, go ahead and throw an error. And it will also redirect the user to the login page. But if you do find the session, then I want you to go ahead and connect to the database. So this is using a Prisma API call to find the unique user where the ID matches the user ID that's stored in our session. And so assuming that that's there, then that gets passed on to every single page and we have access to the logged in user. What's cool about the Redwood router is that everything is inside this render block. So you can think of it as we're rendering a document, and then these are the routes that we have within our document. So right now we have our home page, and this, you can think of this almost as the request. This is the URL that we are requesting, and this is the response. So you can either provide a actual response, or you can provide a JSX template or like a React component for it to return. This looks a little different because what this is doing is this is saying, hey, this is a protected route. And here we're going to run an interrupter. So interrupters are very similar to middleware. It runs in between the request and the response cycle. But the difference is it will interrupt it. So whereas middleware runs between every single request that you have, an interrupter is only going to run on that particular route. So here it's only checking to say, hey, is the user logged in on the protected page? And this is nice because if it's not a protected page, there's no need or no reason to run that check. So here it's saying we're going to check the user. If the user is not logged in, go ahead and send them to the login page. Otherwise, you can show them the home page. So what we could do just to see how this is working. So right now we have a response that we're returning. Let's actually just return our home component. So I'm just going to say home here. And this is getting returned here at the top, or imported at the top. And you can see it's just checking to see if the user is logged in. I'm going to go ahead and comment this out for right now. Actually, I can leave this uncommented because it does have a check to say you are not logged in. Let's save our worker and let's take a look at what this actually looks like. So if I refresh, you can see it says now you are not logged in. Pretty cool, right? So, and this is applying our Tailwind styles. So for example, if I come back over to our homepage here, let's put some text here at the top that just says YOLO. And I'm going to make this red. So I'm going to say class name. Yeah, let's make sure that that N is capitalized. Let's make it large, bold, and let's also make it red so that it is obvious that this text is there. So if I hit refresh, awesome. Our Tailwind styles are working. So now let's go ahead and let's install ShadCN. So I'm going to come over to ShadCN. I always go to shadcn.com, but that's not where the UI stuff is. Okay, so here on Docs, again, we are using Vite, so we can just click directly onto that. And I can copy and paste our PMPM create Vite at latest. Actually, that's just creating the project. We don't need to do that. We already installed Tailwind. Don't need to do that. We already set up our index.css file. Don't need to do that. We can come down to our tsconfig.json file and fix this next little piece. So if I come over to cursor, let's go tsconfig. And here we have our paths, which looks great, but we don't have our base URL set up. So I'm just going to say, hey, the base URL is this path that our tsconfig file is inside. So if I come back over, you can see that actually matches their documentation. And then they've set the path for at to be the source directory. So that is exactly what we already have set up. Awesome. Sebastian, I think people are just looking for an alternative to Next with React Server Components. And what's interesting right now is that like the lines have kind of blurred between React and Next, just because there's not a strong alternative with React Server Components. So I think that's one of the things that I'm excited about the work that we're doing at Redwood right now is I feel like now we do have a viable option. Let's see. So come back over. Q just asked, hey, you have a very cool design site. Seems like it's on Next, but I am wrong. Are you previously making stuff with 11D? So I've used all the frameworks at some point. I currently work on the RedwoodJS core team. So we just put Redwood SDK in preview mode. So that's what I'm building with right now. My personal website is built on Next. I'm using a Tailwind template for that one. The self-teach me site, I think the live version is built in Next. I've rebuilt it in Astro. I don't think that one was deployed though. And then I have several applications built on Astro and Remix, Compressed FM. So I co-host a podcast called Compressed FM. It's currently in Remix. And then I have several applications in Redwood. So all over the place. I did use Vue a long time ago, but I haven't done a ton with Vue. I've used Svelte. I really like Svelte. Svelte's a great option. The cool thing about Vue that I found is being able to just sprinkle in components in different places, but I haven't used it on a framework like Next. So anyways, that would be something to maybe experiment with in the future. Okay, so we have our tsconfig file set up, and we don't need that app.json file. We have a vconfig.ts file, so we want to add our node type. So I'm just going to copy this and can paste that into our terminal. Cool. And now it's wanting us to add a few things to our Vite config. It's asking us to set up Tailwind, which we already did. I don't think I actually need to run that step. And then if I come on down, this is the important one. This is where we're actually installing Shad. So I'm going to copy this and I will paste this into my terminal. Cool. And now it's saying it's going to ask us a few things to configure our components.json file. So I'm going to go ahead and use neutral, the neutral color palette. That sounds great. And it installed everything, which is wonderful. Now it says the command will add the button to our project. Okay, that's fine. So for this next step, let's go ahead and install a few components from Shad. And I'm going to pull up really quick my reference notes for which components we actually need. Give me just a second. If you are, I'm curious in the chat, if you want to tell me what frameworks you've used, which one's your favorite, if you're using Next or you're using React or using Vue. I've heard good things about 11D. I know you guys mentioned that one, but haven't used it. I've kind of leaned into Astro if it has to be super simple. Let's see. I'm trying to go to my Redwood project. I'm just going to pull up a few notes that I have here. So probably launch. Actually, you know what? I could just do it straight from the terminal. That'd probably be faster. So I started to write out the tutorial for this, and then I thought this would be easier if I just live stream it. So I'm going to go to site, cd redwood, cd SDK, cd docs, and then I'm going to open this guy up. So our docs are actually running inside of Astro. We're using this Starlight template, which I really have enjoyed working with. Okay, so oh, this is not the right one. Not on the right branch. Let's see. Let me come back over. Give me just a second. Let's get on the right branch. This is the fun part, right? Trying to manage all the things and all the different branches. I think we're going to be on the docs tutorial branch. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Okay, let me run this again. See what it is not running. So let me do this. I'm going to just open it up. At least now that I'm on the right branch, I can see. Cool, cool, cool. Tutorial. Wonderful. And I'm going to go over to create app. Wonderful, wonderful. Get the list. Thanks for bearing with me here. Oh yeah, we can set up our theme. Let's do that. So within, we set up Tailwind. And so what I want to do now is I want to set up our theme that we need. Let me show you. I haven't even shown you what we're going to be building. If I come over to Figma here, and I have a bunch of projects open, close some of these. I want to pull up, I think that's in my Redwood folder. Yeah, this is what we're going to be building. So as I mentioned, this is an application that helps track like job submissions and things like that if you're applying for a bunch of different jobs. And so we have here, we're going to use passkey auth to handle our authentication. And then here, we're going to be tracking all the jobs that we've applied for. And then once you have that set up, here's the form for being able to add an application. You can also track contacts for that particular application and the company that you're talking about. And then we'll be able to view that role. And that way, again, you can just keep track of it all. So we probably won't get through everything today, but at least we can get a good start to the application. So all these colors and everything I've already set up. So we just need to pull that into our global.css file. Okay, so I'm going to go over to my styles.css file here. And all these styles that you see that are loaded in are styles that Shad has added to our file. It's kind of interesting that they put a line space in between every single one. Shoo. Okay, so at the bottom, because CSS is like cascade, the order matters. We're just going to come down and I'm going to create a theme block. And so within Tailwind 4, the theme is how you control all your custom settings. So instead of using a tailwind.config.js file, you put everything within a theme block. Q, you asked what framework do I feel the most productive with? 11 or Astro seems so much simpler than Next. So it's like about being more results with less mental load at the same time. Yeah, so it depends on what I'm trying to do. If I'm trying to create a landing page, I feel most productive probably in Astro. If it doesn't have any application like functionality, I don't need a database. I'm just trying to build a marketing page. I'll probably lean towards Astro. The other thing I really like about Astro is being able to use markdown files, particularly MDX. It is definitely a lot simpler than Next. Next, I really do love working with React Server components, which I think is what excites me about the stuff that we're doing with the SDK is that you can use React Server components in something and you're not tied to Next. One of the big differentiators, and you kind of saw that when I gave you a preview of the worker.tsx file, is this is how we're handling the router. So the router feels very different than Next. So Next is kind of interesting because it's all file and folder based. And so you have to structure your project a particular way in order to get everything to work and load correctly. Whereas this, it doesn't really matter in the sense that it's not going to affect your URLs. You can do something that works and makes sense for your project, which a lot of times when I'm working with bigger projects, I found it's a little bit easier to scale when I have control over that and the URLs aren't necessarily dictating the structure. So, it just depends. I've built projects in Remix. The thing that's interesting about Remix, I need to look at it again now that they've put their middleware in preview mode. But a lot of times, if you're trying to do the same thing on every single page, like check for a login, you end up creating these really fat loaders at the top of your page. And it just feels like a lot of times that my pages are unnecessarily large for what I'm trying to do. So, and I think, talking about the mental load, that is one thing about Next is you have the pages router where you have all the different types of rendering. You can do all of that within a single framework, which, can feel like, man, I got a lot of power, but it can also feel like it's decision fatigue when you're trying to decide how should I handle this particular problem. So, yeah, and Next is, definitely a popular option. Right now it is probably the most popular, but hopefully that'll change. We'll see. Okay, cool. So here, what we're trying to do now is we have our themes loaded in. So I have a couple of fonts here. I'm using Poppins and Enter. So I want to go ahead and grab those. And those are just coming from Google Fonts. So all I need to do with that is I can just include a couple of @import lines. So I think I already have those saved in my notes. Of course, I can go grab them. Yeah, I do have them. Cool. So here at the top of my file, I'm just going to hit Command up to go to the top and above the Tailwind import. So this is coming straight from Google Fonts. It's giving me Poppins. I'm grabbing the 500 and 700 weights. Enter, I'm grabbing 400 and 700. But now if I come on down to my theme block, I have a couple of utility classes set up to display Poppins and Enter. Okay, sweet. So now let's go add the components that we need from ShadCN. So I'm going to, let's see, we want to run a command. And actually the nice thing about Shad is you don't have to run the command each time you want to import one component. I mean, you can do it that way, but we can also bulk import. So if I say pmpm dlx ShadCN at latest add, this will give me a list of, oh, did I hit the wrong thing? Should have given me, I was going to say a list of all the, oh yeah, perfect. There it is. I was looking at the wrong line. We can add all of our components. So I want to come down here. I'm going to add our alert component. So I just hit the space button to select that. I'm going to add our avatar component, our badge component, our breadcrumb component, our button, our calendar, and let's grab a regular old input field as well as a label. And let me see, what else do I need? I also need some pagination and a popover and a select field and a sheet component and a sonar component. So that's just like for toast notifications. And then I'm also going to grab the table component. So I'm going to hit return. And what this is doing is it's just saying like, yeah, we're going to create this components file. That's interesting that I'm in the wrong folder. Check that out. That's why it was acting weird with the install. Of course I am. So yay, we get to do that all over again. Sorry about that. Okay, so cd redwood applywise script. Now we can run that. Did I hit the wrong cd redwood ls? We want to go inside our, I thought it was applywise. Let's see. Why was that being weird? CD apply wise ls. There we go. Okay. I don't know why that was having so much trouble. Okay, so if we come back and let's add shed cn. Cool. Now let's go through our list one more time. We need our alert component, our avatar component, our badge component, our breadcrumb, our button, our calendar, and our input. Cool. Our label and our pagination, our popover, a select field, a sheet component, sonar, which is again our toast component, and a table. Cool. So all that's working. It's checking with the registry. While that's running, I'm going to jump over to Arc, and here with Shed CN, I want to also add a date picker component. What's interesting about the date picker component is you can add it within that particular menu. But what it is doing is it's using the popover component and the calendar component, which we already added. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to just copy all of this code. And then I'm going to come back over to cursor, and inside of our components directory here, I am, you can see it created a UI folder. I'm going to create a new folder here, and actually I don't need new. I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this date picker. Did that, there we go, datepicker.tsx. Now I think I want this components directory to actually be inside my app directory. Just feel like that makes more sense because all these other components are already there. So, okay, cool. So we have our UI and our date picker. So inside of our datepicker.tsx file, I'm going to paste this in, and it has a few issues here with how our imports are set up. And that's because we have our at, and then we need this to be app. So let's fix this path. This is one thing I don't really understand about Shad components. I don't think I set it up here, but it's like you can set up the base for your components. Like if I want this to be in the app directory, but this doesn't affect where they get installed. It's like it doesn't always respect the directory settings. Okay, I think we're good there. Now, if we want to check this to see, okay, did it actually install and can I use these components? Let's come over to our home page and let's put in our date picker. And I think it's calling it demo because when you copy and paste, yeah, it calls it date picker demo. I just want to call it date picker. Okay, so I'm going to come back over to home, and let's go ahead and import this at the top of our file and hit save. And now I think, fingers crossed, if we load this up inside of our project, oh, I'm getting an error. Okay, so, oh, it's not importing the button from the right place. Okay, so let's come over to our button. If I come over here, it is going to our libutils. Okay, that looks like, let me read the error. That might help. It's saying that it cannot find our module at components. I know it has to have app in there. That's why it's not working. Inside the calendar. Yeah, it helps when you read the error message. Okay, so here, this is where it's not right. Okay, so now if I hit refresh, where's my component? Okay, loading. So now it's saying element type is invalid, expected a string or a class, but got undefined. So there's an issue. Let's try, just to help make testing easier here, instead of using our date picker, let's use a button component because I don't think this is going to be quite as complicated as the date picker, which is pulling in multiple imports. Okay, so I'm going to hit refresh. There we go. So our Shad stuff is working. There is our button. And if we give that some text, it is saying click me. Okay. Let me see if I can figure out what is going on with our date picker, since we will have to eventually get that working. Let's see. I think, oh, that might be part of the problem. We want our date picker to be inside the UI folder, since that is coming from ShadCN. And it looks like that is working. Okay. Let's come back over. Perfect. There's our date picker. Lovely. Beautiful. Okay. Sweet. We're off to the races now. Okay. Let's set up, let's just, let me think. What do we want to do? Let's just jump right in and start working with Prisma, get our database stuff working. So, the Redwood SDK does come with Prisma installed. So here it comes with the standard starter has a user model and a credential model. So we're using passkeys. And the nice thing about that is you don't have to worry about sending email right out of the gate. You can obviously switch to a different login system if you want. But the nice thing is that with passkeys, you don't have to worry about all that. I'm going to come over and I've already made a list in my notes of all the tables that we need. Let me see if I can find it. Perfect. I think I found it. Give me just a second and I can kind of walk through these. But what I do generally, and some of it's just because I come from a design background, is I will look through the design and pick out all the different pieces that I need, all the data that I want to store within the database. So the first thing that we're going to do is I want to track applications. So if I come up here, I'm going to set up a model for our application. And when you're working with Prisma, the convention that they typically use is a capital letter for the model name, and then it's a singular name. So it's just application or just user. We are going to use an ID, and I'm going to make this a string, and the default value is going to be a UUID. So when you're creating IDs, you can either use a UUID, which is a string, or you can use a number. And the nice thing about numbers is that you can quickly get an idea of how many entries are in that database, but it's easy to guess. So if you have a user of 1, I can also guess you might have a user of 2. And so sometimes that can create security concerns because you can guess what those IDs are. Whereas if it's a UUID, it's this random string of letters and numbers. It's a lot harder to guess. So in this case, there's a chance that this application will be front facing. You might see the ID and I want to make sure you can't guess it. So we'll make that a UUID. Let's see. I also want to have, say, the salary. And I want to do the minimal value so we can make that an integer. And by default, I at least want that to be 1. I mean, you should be making at least $1, right? The salary max, let's go ahead and actually, you know what? Let's make this a string instead of an integer. That way it can really be anything. If you want to include whatever currency you have, you can include that. If you want to include commas, you can include that. We're not really doing calculations on the salary, so I think we'll be fine as a string. And these are optional, so I'm going to put a question mark. Now, when you're working with data, typically you want a created and an updated value so that you can see when the value was last created and when it was last updated. So I almost include those fields on every single table that I create. And then let's also include the date that we applied for this job. And we can just say, hey, whatever date and time. It is not required. So we have our question mark. I want to include a job title, and we'll make this a string. I also want to include a cursor's trying to help. Let's include a job description, and we can make this a string. I also want to include a posting URL. So that's like, where did the application come from? Where are we trying to post this to? And then let's also say, like, maybe we have an archive field, and this will be a Boolean that we can set to say, like, if the job kind of closes or we've moved on, let's archive it. Okay, there's a few more fields, but these fields are going to require relationships. So we want to be able to tie our application to a specific user. So we can say we have a user ID, which will help us know which user table to put that on. And then within Prisma, when you do that, you also have to say, okay, this is going to be a user with a type of user is how I usually think of it, because we're pointing to this particular model. It is a relationship, but then you have to specify how those things are related. So we have the user ID field, which is on our application table. So it's saying this is how we're tying it together, and it's going to reference the ID on our user table. The Prisma extension with VS Code or Cursor or whatever you're using is fantastic because it'll also help autocomplete a lot of these things. So you can see here it's trying to autocomplete. When you set up a relationship, not only do you have to have a relationship where you're setting up that ID, but you also have to have it on the other table to say, okay, there's applications, and it's going to basically be an array of applications pointing on the application model. Okay, let's also set up one for status. Now, the status is I want to hold inside of a table. So I'm going to create another model here, and let's just call this application status. And we do want that to have an ID. Now, this one's a little bit different. To me, it doesn't matter whether you can guess what the application status is. So I'm just going to use an integer here. I do want that to be an ID field that we just auto increment. And we can give our status a name. And for now, we'll just say that's a string. And we can say that we want to be able to tie that to our applications. So let's come back up to our application model and let's tie those things together. So we can say that, yeah, you are going to have a salary application status. Let's call this application status ID. So that's going to be an integer. And we'll tie it to the application status model. So again, we have to tell it how we're establishing that relationship. So it is being established through the application status ID that we set up, and it's going to reference the ID on our application status. Okay, so Q, you did ask a question, kind of an aha moment, asking about deploy. Yeah, right now, Redwood SDK deploys to Cloudflare. So you could, I think, technically deploy it elsewhere if you're using Cloudflare workers, but it's super easy if you are just going to say, hey, I'm going to deploy on Cloudflare, because you just run a deploy command line and it deploys. So yeah, it's pretty great. Okay, so we set up our relationship for application status. Let's keep moving on. I want to set up a table here for companies. So I'm going to say model company. And here we're going to have an ID. So again, I'm going to use a string with a UUID. Let's make sure that our company has a name, and we're going to tie this to applications. So whatever applications we have, that should be tied to a company. So again, I'll need to come up here and create that relationship. So cursor kind of helped me out there. And then let's also include our created at and our updated at date and time. And I also want to include, we haven't created this, but a contact. So companies can have contacts. So let's come on down here and create a model for contact. And with this one, I don't want to be able to guess that contact ID. So I'm going to use a UUID. Let's put a first name instead of just a full name field. I'll have a last name. We can have email. I'm going to make this optional though, because it's not like this person's logging in. It would just help us from a contact standpoint. I don't think we really need phone number, but let's also include role. And this can just be a string. I'm not trying to like sort by those things. Different roles can have different like job titles or at different companies. So we don't need to standardize that. We don't really need the application because we're not tying a contact to an application. We're tying it to a company. So let's say we have a company ID, and that's going to be a string because the company ID is using a UUID. And then we want to create that relationship. Now up here, you can see it's trying to help us out. We have to tie our contacts in the company model to our contacts table down here. And then let's also include our created at create at and updated dates. Okay, looks good. Now let's keep moving on down. I think we're not going to touch our credential table. We don't need to worry about that. That's already kind of set up for us. But with our user table, let's see, we have our applications here. We have our credentials. I think that's really all we need. The nice thing is, obviously, we can iterate on this if we start working through it and need to add or do more or less. Let me just make sure from my notes that I think we got all of our stuff set up here with our applications too. Okay, so let's run our schema. Now, when we ran PMPM dev the first time, it did set up our Wrangler folder with our D1 mini Flare database. I'm going to blow this whole Wrangler folder away because I'm going to set this up and give it a specific name so that's running and connected to my Cloudflare account. So if you'll give me just a second, I'm going to log into my Cloudflare account. And I'm just going to make sure I don't have a existing ApplyWise database. I'm just going to start a new one. The cool part about Cloudflare is it includes a lot of these services that you need out of the box, like including, oh man, it's like everything that you need. AI, it has all that. It has image transformations, storage, jobs if you're trying to run queues. It has everything. Okay. I'm just removing my existing database. Okay. Sweet. So now I'm going to come on, let's see. We haven't set up our database just yet. Perfect. So what I'm going to do is in the terminal here, I'm going to say npx wrangler. Now, I think the first time that you run this command, you do have to have your Cloudflare account. Like you have to set that up. But mine's already connected. So I'm going to say D1. So that's the name for the Cloudflare database, D1, create ApplyWise. So what this will do is it should set everything up for us. So you can see it's running Wrangler and it's set up our ApplyWise folder, set up our region. So here is my credentials. So I'll blow this away later in case you're going to rip it off the stream. But here we have our wrangler.json C file. I'm going to change the worker name to be ApplyWise, which is the name of our project. And I'm going to come on down. I want to name our application ApplyWise. And I'm going to come down here and see, it's going to say, what's your database name? We set that up as ApplyWise. And then I'm going to copy the database ID and I'm going to paste that into our wrangler.json C file. So that has all of our settings in it. Cool. So now if I run pnpm dev, it looks like, oh, pnpm dev. There we go. Actually, you know what? I think we have that running in Warp instead. Let me close that down. Okay. If I come into my Wrangler folder, you can see D1. Here is my D1 database, and I have a extension within VS Code that allows me to look at this. This is just a SQLite database that you can check out, which is pretty cool that that's right there. Okay, so I've got to create a migration now. And if you look inside the package.json file, there's a bunch of scripts there that we can use for reference. So if I come over to package.json, you can see this is what we're going to run. We're going to run migrate new. So this will create a new migration for us. So we say pnpm migrate new, and then I have to give it a name. I have to give our migration a name. So I'm just going to call this initial migration because that sets up all of the models that we need for our database. So, Q, you're saying that autocomplete is cool, but Gemini 2.5 writes much more robust code. Oh, interesting. I haven't tried that out yet. Most of my stuff I'm using Claude. I love 3.7 Sonnet. It's probably my preference. Okay, so this should have run the migration. And if we check this out now, you can see that all of our tables are there, which is pretty great. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to put some data inside of our database. And there's a couple ways to do this. We can either create a seed file, or because we're using Prisma, there is Prisma Studio that ships with Prisma. So the only thing in order to get that to work is we need to be able to set up our database URL. So if I come in here to our database source, you can see this is looking for an environmental variable. We can come down to our .env file. And I can say I have my database URL, and I'm just going to come over here and right click, and I'm going to say I want to copy the path for this. The trick here is you do have to say file. I'm going to paste that in, and this does need to be a relative file. So, and it is relative based on the .env folders. I think, let's see if this will solve it. Just going to check my notes really quick. We do have to go up a directory. There we go. Out a directory. Okay, so if I come down to my terminal now, I should be able to say npx Prisma Studio, and it will run Prisma Studio on port 5555. So I'm going to copy this. Let me just pull up a new tab. Check that out. There's Prisma Studio. Now, from here, I can just seed my database with data if I want. So, for example, with our application status, I could just go ahead and say, yeah, I want to do 1. Now, this should auto increment, but I could say, like, if I want to call this active, and now it'll save my change. So it's loading those application statuses. And now I could even come over to my application and load one in here as well so that I'll have content. Pretty cool, right? I'm going to it. I'm starting to run a little close on time, but let's go ahead and style a little bit here. We haven't done a lot of styling. And the nice part is, since we're using ShadCN, this should make it pretty fast, and you guys will get to see a little bit better look at the router. So within the worker.tsx file. So I'm going to close all these down. So here under our source, we have our app pages directory. We have our home page, which we did modify and add the YOLO and our shad component. But we also have a user directory. And this is where we're setting up. And it already has the passkey stuff built in. If you click on login, there's functions here for logging in as well as signing up. And it'll hook it up to Turnstile, which you've probably seen this if you go to a website that has Cloudflare. It'll say, like, click this checkbox to prove that you're a human. Like, that's basically Turnstile. And you can set up different things. So if you don't want the user to have to check anything, you can still use Turnstile to do bot protection without having to make them do anything. But you could also make it super hard, make them solve a puzzle or something like that. Now, with the worker.tsx file, as I mentioned, it will either return a response or you can have it return a component, like a React component. The other thing you can do, look, this one looks a little bit different. It's prefix. So what this is doing is it's saying, hey, any of our user or authenticated routes, let's prefix this with user. So if you want to go to login, actually, we can just pull this up. I'll show you what I'm talking about. You can go to user/login, and there's our login. Now, where is it getting that login from? Well, because this is just JavaScript, it is grabbing this user routes, and we come up, it's coming from our user routes file. So it's just importing that. So if you want to abstract it, if your worker.tsx file starts to get large, you can co-locate your route logic with your actual page files, which is kind of neat. So here it's setting up the login route, and it's returning the login component. Here it's setting up the log out page, and you'll notice the response here is it's actually running a function. You don't have to return a page if you don't want to. You can just tell it what to do. So in this case, we're saying remove the session and go ahead and redirect the user to the homepage, and then go ahead and return a response. So this is pretty nice. If we want to create a sign up page, what we can do is we can just duplicate this line, change this to /signup. Now remember, even though it says /signup here within our worker.tsx file, we have prefixed it with user. So you have to go to /user/signup. And then here we want to return our, say, signup component. And we haven't created this yet. So I could just say login, because you have that functionality there as well. So if I go to /login, you get that, or /signup, you get the same page. So let's just split that out. So we have that logic in 2 different places. So here in my user folder, I'm going to create a new file called signup.tsx. And I'm just going to copy all the code from my login page into my signup page. And instead of calling this, I think it's called /login. Yeah, our login component. I'm going to call this sign up component. And let's take out the login functionality, the login logic. We just want to leave the register logic. So I'm going to remove that function, and let's see. Let me make this go away that we have a little bit more space. Handle perform passkey register. We want to keep that, but we can get rid of the handle passkey login. So we just have our finish passkey register function. We have our passkey register here, and then we can get rid of our login button. So now we just have all of our sign up code, which is great. And then we can come over to sign up here, and did I do that backwards? Let's see, login. Yep, I'm going to get rid of register here. Perfect. Then we can get rid of our login logic here at the bottom. Cool. So now if I come back over to my worker, you can, let's see, we're referencing our routes.tsx file. Instead of sign up, instead of login, we want sign up. Now we do have to import that at the top. And let's add some headings here just so we can make sure that we are on the right page. So I'm going to say H1 sign up. And then on our login page, I'm going to say H1 login. So now if I come back over to the browser and hit refresh, you can see, hey, we're on our sign up page. And if I go to /login, you can see we're on our login page. Pretty cool. Okay, now the other thing that's kind of interesting about links within the Redwood SDK is we have this shared links.tsx file. And this is where this really comes in handy for like type safety. So for example, I can go ahead and list all the routes that I have in my application. So we have a home page, a login page, a sign up page, so I'm going to say this should be /users. Now, when I go to set up a link between these two pages here, so I'm going to say I'm going to say it is going to be /user/login, but let me show you what I'm talking about. If I do, I think that's right. Oh, we want to call our link component here. There we go. And let's import this. I think we got ahead. There we go. So the advantage to doing it like this is that it will suggest your routes. See? So I can say that, yes, this is going to our login page. So I'm going to save that. Now let's go over to our login page. We want to link in the other direction. So I'm going to change this to sign up. And here we can change this to sign up. And then we can dynamically import our link at the top. So let me come over here. Perfect. So now if we look at this within the browser, Stony Eagle, I would love to hear your super duper important question. I'm getting close on time, so this is a perfect opportunity. Have I taken the big Q yet? No, I haven't. I need to reach out to James. I've thought about even getting a Q and just sticking it in the back. Just say I got it. I'll do that just for you. Oh man. Okay, well I'm gonna have to wrap it up right now. My kids are like, we need you. But I will probably be live streaming tomorrow and love for you guys to jump in. I'm gonna keep working on this particular app. And again, just getting something to work within React Server Components. So thanks for hanging out.